She laughed and said, "You don't know how dangerous it is staying here. I didn't know then that danger could feel like this." The story opens with the male narrator, a young man in his mid-20s, arriving at a suburban home for the first time. The house itself is a character warm, lived in, and softly illuminated by late afternoon sunlight filtering through sheer curtains. As he steps onto the porch, the smell of freshly baked bread mingles with the crisp scent of autumn leaves outside. There's an immediate sense that this is a place of quiet order, yet also secrets tucked into corners, waiting to be discovered. The narrator's first encounter with the woman, his mother's friend, in her early 40s, sets the tone for the emotional tension that will thread through the story. She opens the door before he can knock, her presence commanding without being overpowering. She is physically graceful, poised, with subtle lines around her eyes hinting at experience and wisdom. Her warm smile, paired with a soft laugh that seems to linger in the air, immediately catches his attention. The narrator notices small details: the delicate way her fingers wrap around the doorframe, the subtle swish of her blouse as she steps aside to let him in. As he walks into the living room, the narrator is struck by the way she moves through the space. Confident, yet with a quiet vulnerability that draws him in. She gestures for him to sit, and there's a fleeting moment when their hands brush as she hands him a glass of water. It's brief, but the narrator feels a subtle warmth spreading through him, a sense of connection that he can't quite place. This is the first seed of intrigue, a touch that communicates more than words ever could. The atmosphere is further enriched by sensory details that hint at underlying tension. The soft ticking of a wall clock, the distant hum of cars outside, and the faint aroma of her perfume create a multi-layered environment. Every small gesture she makes, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, smoothing her skirt as she sits across from him, becomes an opportunity for the narrator to observe, to connect, and to quietly admire. The audience should feel the slow, deliberate pace of his attention, mirroring his emotional state. There's also an undercurrent of curiosity and unease. The woman's mother has left him in this space with someone who seems both approachable and enigmatic. Her laughter occasionally carries a teasing edge, hinting at knowledge of things he doesn't yet understand. The narrator senses that beneath her calm exterior, there's complexity, maybe even danger, but it's compelling rather than frightening. The line between admiration and attraction begins to blur, establishing the subtle tension necessary for a slow-burn romance. By the end of this part, the audience should feel that the narrator is at the threshold of something transformative. He's drawn to her warmth, intrigued by her hints of mystery, and aware, perhaps for the first time, of emotions that mix admiration, nervousness, and an unspoken curiosity. This sets the foundation for the story's gradual emotional build, ensuring the audience is invested in both the characters and the subtle pull forming between them. This part deepens the atmosphere of curiosity and subtle tension introduced in Part 1. After the young man has settled into the warm, inviting home, the woman, his mother's friend, gracefully poised in her early 40s, begins to reveal glimpses of her world. She laughs lightly at his tentative questions about the house or the neighborhood, and then, with a playful yet serious tone, delivers the line that will echo throughout the story. "You don't know how dangerous it is staying here." Her words are almost casual, yet the inflection carries weight. The danger she hints at is ambiguous. Is it literal, social, or emotional? The narrator doesn't immediately know, but the tension is palpable. The audience should sense that this is more than a simple warning. It's a tease, a thread pulling him deeper into her orbit. Sensory details in this scene heighten the subtle intrigue. The room is softly lit by the afternoon sun, the warm glow reflecting off polished wooden surfaces. There is a faint scent of citrus from a vase of fresh flowers, mixed with the lingering aroma of the tea she has just poured. When she speaks, her voice has a soft, velvety tone that contrasts with the sharpness of her words, making the warning feel simultaneously alluring and disarming. The narrator's response is layered: curiosity, unease, and an unacknowledged admiration. He notices how her eyes catch the light when she speaks, a playful glint dancing at the corners. There is a tension in the way she moves around the kitchen, The sway of her hips, the tilt of her head, the casual grace of her gestures, that makes him acutely aware of her presence. This is the first real moment where the audience can see the subtle magnetic pull forming between them. Physical closeness continues to play a key role in building tension. As she leans forward to set down a cup of tea, their hands nearly touch, and the brief, almost accidental contact sends a quiet jolt through him. The narrator notices the warmth of her skin, the slight brush of her sleeve against his arm, and the way his own pulse seems to respond. It's a fleeting, intimate moment that is entirely YouTube-safe, but charged with unspoken emotion. At the same time, the narrative introduces small emotional stakes. He begins to sense that this woman carries knowledge and experience that surpass his own, and there is a thrill in that recognition. He is both captivated and cautious, aware that this house, and this woman, may challenge him in ways he doesn't yet understand. The audience should feel his internal conflict. Admiration, curiosity, and a hint of nervousness, all mixing together. By the end of part 2, the young man's fascination is no longer casual. The woman's warning, combined with her playful confidence and the subtle intimacy of their interactions, has created a tension that lingers in the air. The audience should feel that the story is moving beyond mere acquaintance. The emotional stakes are rising, the attraction is quietly building, and the slow-burn romance is beginning to take root. By now, the young man has settled into the warm, slightly mysterious atmosphere of the house, and the subtle tension between him and the woman, his mother's friend, begins to take on a more intimate, personal dimension. This part focuses on accidental physical closeness and the emotional resonance that follows, setting the stage for the slow-burn romance. The scene opens with a seemingly mundane incident. He stumbles while reaching for a book or drops a cup of tea. The moment is ordinary, yet the way she responds transforms it into something charged with quiet emotion. She moves toward him instinctively, her presence calm and steady, guiding him with a gentle hand on his arm. The narrator feels the brief warmth of her fingers, the soft pressure of her palm steadying his balance. In that fleeting contact, he experiences an unspoken comfort, the steady reassurance of her presence mingled with the thrill of proximity. Sensory details heighten the intensity of the moment. The faint aroma of her perfume, floral with a subtle hint of vanilla, lingers in the air, mingling with the scent of the tea they had been sharing. The sunlight streaming through the curtains catches her hair, highlighting strands of soft brown and gold as she bends slightly toward him. Her voice, quiet yet melodic, reassures him, and he notices the way her lips curve in a gentle, almost teasing smile. Each detail amplifies his awareness of her, making the ordinary extraordinary. Emotional complexity is central here. The narrator is conscious of the age difference. He is in his mid-20s, she in her early 40s, and yet the warmth of her touch and the steadiness in her gaze make him acutely aware of a pull he cannot fully explain. There is a delicate tension in the air. Attraction tempered by hesitation, admiration tempered by respect. The audience should feel this internal struggle, sensing the thrill and restraint intertwining in his thoughts. As the moment settles, they find themselves sitting closer than before, perhaps on a couch or near a small table. He notices the subtle cues of intimacy, the faint brushing of her sleeve against his arm, the way she adjusts her posture to face him more directly, the gentle cadence of her laughter as they share a light-hearted exchange. Each small gesture communicates care, attention, and an unspoken connection. There is no overt romantic declaration, but the emotional tension is palpable. This part also begins to deepen their understanding of each other. He sees hints of vulnerability in her eyes, small cracks in her otherwise composed demeanor. A sigh when she thinks he isn't looking, a reflective pause before answering a question. And these glimpses make him feel both protective and drawn to her. For the audience, it's a moment of emotional resonance. Intimacy through subtlety rather than spectacle. By the end of part 3, the bond between them has shifted imperceptibly but meaningfully. Accidental touches, shared laughter, and quiet observation have built a bridge of trust and curiosity. The slow-burn tension is now tangible. The narrator is captivated not just by her appearance or grace, but by the way she inhabits the world, and by the subtle ways she acknowledges his presence. The audience should feel anticipation and a gentle, simmering excitement for what comes next. By this stage, the subtle physical tension between the young man and the woman has evolved into an emotional intimacy that begins to touch the heart. Part 4 focuses on revealing her inner world, deepening the connection, and allowing the audience to see her vulnerability alongside her quiet strength. This part is crucial for building the slow-burn romance in a way that feels organic and YouTube-safe. The scene begins in a quiet corner of the house, perhaps the living room, where sunlight filters softly through lace curtains, or a small balcony where the sounds of birds and rustling leaves create a private cocoon. The woman, graceful in her early 40s, starts sharing a memory or story from her past. It might be a personal struggle, a loss, or a moment of profound change, something that reveals the layers behind her confident exterior. Her voice is soft, almost hesitant at first, and the narrator notices the way her fingers twist a ring or brush over a delicate necklace as she speaks. The narrator is drawn in, listening intently, feeling the weight of her words without interruption. Each detail, the slight catch in her voice, the slow blink of her eyes, the pause before she continues, communicates more than the story itself. He senses a fragility beneath her poise, a humanity that makes her even more compelling. In turn, the audience feels this emotional resonance. A woman who is strong yet quietly vulnerable, experienced yet open to connection. Sensory descriptions enhance the intimacy of the scene. Perhaps she wraps a shawl around her shoulders as a nervous habit, or leans slightly toward him, closing the physical space just enough to create warmth and connection. He notices the faint scent of her perfume mixed with the earthy aroma of the tea they've been drinking, the subtle weight of her presence beside him, the rhythm of her breathing as she recounts something deeply personal. These details make the audience feel as if they are observing a tender, private moment. The emotional tension here is layered. The narrator feels a mix of admiration, protectiveness, and an unspoken pull that is both thrilling and disorienting. He notices the way her eyes occasionally flick to his, and the brief glances that linger convey understanding and unspoken acknowledgement. There is no rush, no overt romantic gesture, just shared presence and deepening trust. This part also subtly reinforces the danger hinted earlier. Her vulnerability is real, but there is an emotional or situational edge. Perhaps she has faced challenges in her life that he cannot fully comprehend, or the environment around them carries a quiet risk. The tension is not physical or sexual. It is emotional and narrative, making the audience care about both her and the bond forming between them. By the end of Part 4, the slow burn tension has taken on a new dimension. The narrator sees her not only as graceful and alluring, but as profoundly human, someone whose strength and fragility coexist in a way that draws him closer emotionally. The audience should feel this shift, a move from curiosity and subtle attraction to emotional investment, setting the stage for mutual recognition and deeper connection in the next parts of the story. By this point in the story, the young man and the woman have moved past casual interaction and subtle curiosity. Their connection has matured into a quiet recognition of something deeper, an unspoken attraction, tempered by hesitation and the awareness of societal norms, life experience, and the age gap. This part is about emotional acknowledgement, mutual awareness, and the delicate balance between desire and restraint. The scene opens in a soft, intimate setting, perhaps an evening spent in the living room with warm lamplight, or a quiet backyard where the sky is streaked with twilight hues. The two sit near one another, not necessarily talking about anything profound, but sharing the comfort of presence. The narrator notices subtle details that speak volumes. The way her shoulder brushes against his as they reach for the same book, or the slight shift in her posture that signals attentiveness. These tiny gestures convey closeness without needing words, and they are rich in sensory impact. As the evening progresses, shared glances become more meaningful. When she laughs at something he says, it isn't just amusement. Her eyes crinkle in a way that communicates warmth, recognition, and subtle approval. He catches himself noticing how her hair falls across her cheek, the gentle cadence of her voice, the soft scent that lingers near her, and a quiet thrill courses through him. The audience should feel the slow-building tension. Attraction communicated through subtle cues, not declarations. Physical closeness remains understated but significant. Perhaps they share a blanket while reading or sit side by side on a porch swing. The narrator senses the warmth of her body nearby, the occasional brush of her hand against his, the comfort of leaning slightly toward her. Each touch is brief, deliberate, and YouTube-safe, yet each carries emotional weight. It's the kind of intimacy that creates a lingering pulse in the heart, a subtle thrill that signals emotional connection. At the same time, there is awareness and restraint. The narrator is conscious of the age difference and the boundaries it imposes. He admires her wisdom and life experience, and this admiration mingles with attraction. The woman, in turn, notices his attentiveness, sincerity, and genuine curiosity. She feels a quiet recognition that he is different from the people she typically meets. Someone willing to see beyond appearances. Someone who notices both her grace and her vulnerability. This mutual recognition forms the emotional fulcrum of the story. They are aware of the tension, and they are both willing to explore it carefully. The emotional stakes are heightened by reflective pauses and internal monologues. He catches himself wondering about societal judgment, the appropriateness of his feelings, and the potential consequences of giving in to attraction. She too shows hesitation, perhaps through a soft sigh or a fleeting glance away, suggesting that she is aware of both the allure and the risk. These moments of internal reflection deepen character development and make the slow-burn romance feel authentic and grounded. By the end of Part 5, the connection between the two is undeniable. They may not have spoken about their feelings explicitly, but the audience senses that both recognize the pull between them. There is mutual admiration, subtle desire, and a shared understanding that something meaningful is unfolding. This sets the stage for the emotional climax of Part 6, where tension peaks and their relationship faces both temptation and hesitation. At this stage, the emotional and physical tension between the young man and the woman reaches its most palpable point. The slow burn that has been building through shared glances, brief touches, and quiet conversations now teeters on the edge of something more intimate, while still remaining YouTube-safe and emotionally compelling. This part is about hesitation, desire, and the delicate balance of restraint and temptation. The scene is set in a private, softly lit environment, perhaps the living room at night with a single lamp casting warm shadows, or the backyard under a sky thick with stars. The world around them feels suspended, isolated from judgment or interruption. This setting allows the audience to focus entirely on the characters' subtle interactions, gestures, and internal conflicts. A small, seemingly ordinary moment escalates the tension. Reaching for the same book on a shelf, passing a cup of tea, or helping each other navigate a minor stumble. Their hands brush, lingering slightly longer than necessary, and the narrator becomes intensely aware of her presence. He notices the warmth of her skin, the soft pressure of her fingers against his, the reassuring steadiness of her touch. Each tiny gesture carries emotional resonance, making the moment charged without words. Sensory details heighten the intimacy. The faint scent of her perfume mingles with the night air, a mixture of floral and vanilla that seems to anchor him to her presence. The quiet rustle of fabric as she adjusts her posture, the soft cadence of her breathing, and the gentle glimmer in her eyes when she smiles create a heightened awareness of both her physical and emotional nearness. For the audience, these cues evoke the unspoken electricity between them, a slow-burning desire that has been carefully cultivated over previous parts. Emotional conflict takes center stage here. The narrator is acutely aware of the age difference, social expectations, and the potential consequences of giving in to this attraction. He wrestles internally with admiration, longing, and the need for restraint. She, too, exhibits hesitation, perhaps through a subtle step back, a soft intake of breath, or a fleeting glance away, acknowledging both her feelings and the caution required. This dual awareness creates a tension that is as much emotional as it is sensory, drawing the audience deeply into their experience. Dialogue, when used, is minimal but charged with meaning. A quiet question, a soft laugh, or a brief acknowledgement of shared attention becomes a vehicle for conveying desire and vulnerability. Their communication relies on pauses, glances, and small gestures rather than overt declarations, keeping the romance subtle and compelling. By the end of Part 6, the emotional stakes have reached their peak. The tension is thick, unspoken yet undeniable. Both characters are acutely aware of the pull between them, and the audience feels the anticipation, the kind of slow, simmering desire that makes each subsequent interaction significant. This climax of emotional tension sets the stage for Part 7, where warmth, resolution, and quiet fulfillment will allow the romance to bloom fully, giving the audience the satisfying payoff they've been waiting for. After the simmering tension of Part 6, the story moves toward its emotional payoff. Part 7 is about acknowledgement, quiet intimacy, and the fulfillment of the slow-burn connection that has developed between the young man and the woman. The aim is to leave the audience with a sense of satisfaction, warmth, and completeness, emphasizing emotional closeness rather than physical romance. The scene is set in a serene, private environment, a porch bathed in the golden hues of late afternoon, a cozy living room with soft lamplight, or a backyard where the breeze carries the scent of flowers and earth. The world feels slowed down, giving the characters space to fully inhabit their emotions. The atmosphere is quiet, reflective, and intimate, signaling a safe place where vulnerability can be shared without fear. The moment of connection begins subtly. They sit or stand near each other, perhaps sharing a blanket, sipping tea, or simply watching the sky shift from amber to twilight. The young man notices the gentle sway of her movements, the way her eyes catch the light, and the soft cadence of her voice as she speaks. All gestures that have become familiar yet still evoke a thrill. Their proximity allows for sensory-rich touches, hands brushing against each other while reaching for the same cup, the warmth of her shoulder close to his, or the faint rustle of her clothing as she leans in to speak. Each touch is meaningful, lingering, and entirely appropriate for a YouTube-friendly story. Emotional intimacy dominates this resolution. They exchange quiet words of understanding, small confessions, or reflections on the time they've spent together. Perhaps he acknowledges how much he has admired her strength and warmth, and she responds with a soft smile, a subtle nod, or a fleeting glance that conveys mutual affection. The audience should feel that both characters have reached a place of trust and recognition. They see each other fully, with admiration, respect, and gentle desire. The tactile, sensory moments reinforce their bond. A shared laugh at a private joke, the brush of hands as they adjust a blanket or sip from the same cup, or the quiet interlocking of fingers creates an understated, yet powerful intimacy. Her presence is steady and comforting, and he finds himself drawn not only to her appearance but to her essence, the wisdom, kindness, and quiet confidence that define her. This reinforces the age gap dynamic without making it a focal point. The connection is emotional first and foremost. Internal reflection adds depth. He recognizes that while the initial allure may have been curiosity and attraction, the true fulfillment lies in trust, mutual understanding, and the shared vulnerability that has grown over their time together. She, in turn, acknowledges the balance between attraction and caution, allowing herself to enjoy the warmth of his company without fear. These reflections provide the audience with emotional closure, making the romance feel grounded and authentic. By the end of Part 7, their relationship reaches a gentle, satisfying resolution. They may share a brief hug, a cheek-to-cheek touch, or simply lean side by side in silence, the unspoken connection speaking volumes. The story concludes with a sense of completeness. The danger hinted at in earlier parts has been navigated or accepted. The emotional tension has been resolved, and the bond between them is genuine, tender, and enduring. The audience is left with warmth, fulfillment, and the lingering resonance of a love that blossomed slowly, thoughtfully, and beautifully. Sparkles, if this slow-burn romance moved you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more heartfelt age gap love stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what moment touched you the most.